Luo Dao. The demon emperor had an extremely solemn expression on his face when he saw that old man which appeared here. Because the old man was the strongest existence in the exalted Han Empire and the strongest protector of the human race. It was exactly because of this old man's presence that the demon race and devil race didn't dare attack the human race. Moreover, he hadn't shown himself for over 1,000 years. Now he'd shown himself again. Luo Dao's gaze descended onto Elder Mu, and then he sized up Elder Mu before he said, "I never expected that another half-saint would be hiding amidst the human race. Who exactly are you?" Elder Mu had an indifferent expression on his face, and he seemed to not be surprised by the arrival of this half-saint from the exalted Han Empire. He said, "I've told them earlier, I'm only an old man who takes care of graves. I never expected that your exalted Han Empire would actually send 3 9th-rank Monarch Realm experts and a half-saint to kill this disciple of mine. Haha, how unexpected." Luo Jun's eyes narrowed slightly. In the next moment, both Luo Dao and Elder Mu vanished on the spot. The surroundings instantly froze. It was like everyone had been frozen on the spot. Around 15 minutes passed before the two of them reappeared here. This time, the expression on Luo Dao's face was unprecedentedly solemn, and his hand which was concealed beneath his sleeve was trembling. On the other hand, Elder Mu seemed completely carefree. "Who exactly are you?" Luo Jun spoke once more in a deep voice. Elder Mu said, "I told you, I'm just an old man who takes care of graves. Do you still intend to fight me? If you do, then those 2 9th-rank Monarch Realm experts of your exalted Han Empire will have to leave their lives behind here today." Suddenly, Luo Dao's pupils constricted, and he gazed at Elder Mu while a trace of shock could be seen in his eyes. "You're that mysterious expert who specializes in burying those who perish on the heaven path." Besides the demon emperor, all the other experts in the surroundings gazed at Elder Mu with shock. All of them had heard of that mysterious expert, yet they'd never met him in the past, and they didn't know which race he was from as well. However, they'd never imagined that the mysterious expert would be standing in front of them right now. Moreover, he was a half-saint. Xianxia's master is a half-saint? At this moment, the Dragon Emperor felt a chill run down his spine. He'd intended to kill Xianxia just now. If the Demon Emperor hadn't stopped him just now and allowed him to kill Xianxia, then even someone as proud as the Dragon Emperor of the Divine Gold Dragon Clan couldn't help but shudder with fear from just thinking about the revenge of a half-saint. Because if a half-saint was determined to seek vengeance, then it would be impossible to stop that half-saint unless 2 half-saints joined forces against that half-saint. Elder Mu gazed at Luo Dao and said, "I might be unable to stop you from killing my disciple, but you're similarly unable to stop me from killing the members of your exalted Han Empire. I believe that if I were to act against your exalted Han Empire, then those 2 from the devil race and demon race will definitely lend me a hand, right?" "You're a human." Luo Dao spoke in a grim tone. Elder Mu shook his head and said, "I'm all alone, and I only have a single disciple. If he dies, then I'll make the entire human race accompany him in death. In any case, human life isn't precious in the eyes of existences like us, right?" Luo Dao fell silent for a short while before he glanced at Xianxia in the end, and then he said, "How about we allow the juniors to resolve their own problems?" Elder Mu glanced at the Grand Elder of the Devil Race and the Dragon Emperor before he said, "What do the 2 of you think about that? How could they dare to refuse in the slightest right now?" The Dragon Emperor said in a low voice, "Of course, I have no objections." The Grand Elder of the Devil Race made his opinion clear as well. Elder Mu nodded, and then he said, "If my disciple were to be killed by someone in the same realm of cultivation, then it's due to his lack of skill. So I won't avenge him. However, if anyone dares to bully him with a higher realm of cultivation, then don't blame me for what happens." Luo Dao took a long glance at Xianxia, and then he waved his hand and took the members of the exalted Han Empire with him as he vanished on the spot. The Grand Elder of the Devil Race led the members of the Devil Race away as well. Because staying here was completely meaningless now. The existence of another half-saint in the human race wasn't good news for the Devil Race at all. Fortunately, the half-saint didn't belong to the exalted Han Empire and wasn't even on the same side as the exalted Han Empire. Otherwise, the devil race would never be able to hold their heads up high again. The Dragon Emperor led the members of the Divine Gold Dragon clan away as well. He wanted to take away that Divine Gold Dragon which Xianxia had refined into a puppet, but he glanced at Elder Mu, and then he chose to turn around and leave without saying a word. After all, he would only be asking for insult with Elder Mu there. Farewell. The Demon Emperor nodded to Elder Mu, and then vanished on the spot. Elder Mu gazed at Nanjing's ancestor, and the latter's eyelids twitched as he said, "I didn't act against your disciple." Elder Mu said, "If I'm not wrong, you're about to arrive at the end of your lifespan, right?" His face fell. Elder Mu continued, "I've prepared your coffin. I presume it won't be long before you'll be using it. What are you trying to say?" And Nanjing's ancestor spoke in a low voice. Elder Mu shook his head and paid no further attention to Nanjing's ancestor. He turned around and gazed at Xianxia as he said, "You're in a very bad situation right now, because the heavens seem to be unwilling to tolerate your existence. If I'm not wrong, then the heavens might act against you again when you break through from the Exalt realm into the Monarch realm. Moreover, you might suffer from horrible luck while you reside in this world, because you'll cease to enjoy the karmic luck of this world." Xianxia withdrew the last drop of life water which he possessed, and he swallowed it before he said, "It doesn't matter. Elder Mu." "Thank you." Elder Mu said, "If I'm not wrong, Luo Jun will definitely become the emperor of the exalted Han Empire after he returns. At that time, he'll possess the faith energy of 3 territories. Perhaps you can protect yourself by combining your current strength with your sword domain, but you'll absolutely be unable to defeat him. You must think of another way if you want to protect the southern territory." Xianxia nodded. This journey of his had allowed him to witness the true strength and reserves of the exalted Han Empire. He knew that it was very difficult to go against this empire, but he refused to give up. After all, even if he did give up, they wouldn't give up on killing him. "What do you intend to do next?" said Elder Mu. Xianxia said, "I'm done with my business in the Central Territory, so it's time to return to the Southern Territory, and it's time to eliminate those sects in the Southern Territory. Moreover, I intend to attack the Flower Palace again. I'm going to obliterate it this time." Elder Mu nodded and said, "After Luo Jun takes control of the exalted Han Empire, he'll definitely have to reorganize the forces within the exalted Han Empire itself. So, he'll probably be unable to pay any attention to the Southern Territory for some time. It is a good opportunity to destroy the Flower Palace. Kid, you better improve your strength as soon as possible, otherwise, you really might not be a match for Luo Jun once he takes control of the other territories." "I will." Xianxia clenched his fists. He was very well aware that his current strength was utterly insufficient to resist the exalted Han Empire. Even if he had Elder Mu backing him, he was still unable to go against the exalted Han Empire. The only way for him to truly be able to look down upon that colossus was to advance into the Monarch realm or even the Half-Saint realm. Elder Mu smiled, and then he vanished on the spot. And Nanjing's ancestor waved his hand and removed the restrictions that were restraining Nanjing. And then he said, "Little girl, I know you hate me, but you've seen it as well. The 2 of us are nothing before the exalted Han Empire. I can't protect you for much longer, so you really have to do something about this temper of yours." Alas! As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flashed and vanished on the spot, and Nanjing fell silent for a moment before she walked towards Xianxia. "So we were still too weak," and Nanjing spoke in a low voice. Today's events allowed her to realize while both she and Xianxia were practically unmatched in the Exalt realm, they were still like ants in the eyes of those supreme experts. Just like in that situation earlier, both Xianxia and her weren't able to resist at all when facing those supreme experts. Xianxia took a deep breath and gazed towards the exalted Han Empire while seemingly material killing intent appeared in his eyes. The events of today had given him a deeper understanding of the importance of strength. Even though he had Elder Mu's backing, he had no doubt that Elder Mu wouldn't be able to stop a half-saint from killing him, The only reason Luo Dao didn't kill him was because Luo Dao didn't want Luo Jun to die. How ironic was that? Indeed, we're still too weak, said Yang Yi. I'm going into closed-door cultivation, and I refuse to leave until I've attained the monarch realm. And Nanjing said, perhaps that day will come very soon, but it might only arrive 100 years from now or even longer. Don't die. I hope that I'll still be able to see you when I emerge from my closed-door cultivation. If you really died, then I'll definitely avenge you, regardless of who it was. As soon as she finished speaking, and Nanjing took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi before she turned around and left. Yang Yi stood silently on the spot while he watched Nanjing's figure vanish from his field of vision. A short while passed before he turned around to look at Xianxia, and then he returned the 12 gold guards to her before he said, we're heading back to the Southern Territory. Will you be coming with us or staying at the Central Territory? I still have matters to attend to in the Central Territory, so I won't be heading back for now, said Xianxia. Yang Yi nodded and then he said, until next time. As soon as he finished speaking, he brought Lu Jianyao along as he flashed onto the back of the divine gold dragon. In merely an instant, the divine gold dragon vanished on the horizon. After Yang Yi left, Xianxia went over to a deserted corner, and then a black shadow appeared behind Xianxia. If Yang Yi was here, he would notice that this black shadow was the pavilion master of the Dark Pavilion whom he'd fought earlier. What a pity! Luo Jun survived in the end. The Dark Pavilion's master said, if Luo Jun died, then the Central Territory would definitely fall into chaos, and the other territories would definitely attack the Central Territory and devour that colossus. Even the demon race and devil race would definitely take part in it. At that time, our Shang dynasty would be able to take advantage of the situation. Alas, I never expected that the exalted Han Empire would actually dispatch a half-saint and 3/9 rank monarch realm experts to kill Yang Yi and protect Luo Jun. It is a pity. Xianxia's expression was icy cold as she said, if I'm not wrong, then the world portrait should be in Yang Ye's possession. The Dark Pavilion's master said, then why didn't you act and seize it from him, my princess? Xianxia glanced at the Dark Pavilion's master and said, do you think that we can go against a half-saint right now? Even if Yang Yi didn't have a master at the half-saint realm, I still wouldn't want to rashly become enemies with him. Moreover, Luo Jun will definitely become the emperor of the exalted Han Empire once he returns. Once he takes full control of the exalted Han Empire, he'll definitely attack the Northern Territory before dealing with the Southern Territory. The Northern Territory is a base we established with painstaking effort, so it can't be lost. Send someone to notify the Emperor of the Northern Territory's Southern Gate Empire that he should form an alliance with the Grand Qin Empire and Dark Beast Empire of the Southern Territory to jointly resist the exalted Han Empire. It's probably impossible to stop Luo Jun anymore. The Dark Pavilion's master spoke in a low voice. Xianxia said, he can be stopped. He won't be able to subdue the Northern Territory and Southern Territory with ease while the world portrait isn't in his possession. The Dark Pavilion's master nodded and said, Princess, the Grand Preceptor sent word that Yang Yi is one who's envied by the heavens, so it's best if you don't come into contact with him much. Xianxia fell silent for a short while, and then she said, I know what I'm doing. You may leave. Yes. On the back of the divine gold dragon, Yang Yi waved his right hand, and then the old man in Taoist robes appeared before him. The old man swept the surroundings with his gaze before he heaved a sigh of relief. He said, a half-saint. I never expected that there would still be 2 half-saint experts in the human world. Kid, you better not allow them to find out about me. Otherwise, they'll definitely kill you to seize me. Perhaps they wouldn't even take a liking to you. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. What nonsense! The old man spoke furiously. Do you know what a natural Tao artifact with a complete equipment spirit represents? If I were to acknowledge them as my owner, then not only would their strengths increase greatly, they would obtain the help of another monarch realm expert. Moreover, it would even be an expert who would hold all things in the world. Do you think they wouldn't be tempted? Not to mention a mere half-saint. Even Saint Lu Yun was tempted. Otherwise, he wouldn't have imprisoned me for so many years. Doesn't that mean I can't use you even if I have you? Said Xianxia. The old man said, it's best if I don't show myself in public, because I should be the only complete natural Tao artifact in the entire world right now. Even though I can't show myself in the open, I can transform into the world portrait, and you can use it to store your possessions. All right? Xianxia nodded and said, unless I have no other choice, I don't want to rely on others anyway. The old man nodded, and then he hesitated for a moment and said, I've just obtained freedom and want to take a look at the world. I'm not trying to flee. You just have to issue a single command in your mind if you need me, because my strength is sufficient for me to come to you in less than 100 breaths of time, even if I'm 2 territories away. Of course, it's fine for you to refuse. Xianxia said, there's nothing to refuse. Since you want to see the world, then go ahead. He wasn't afraid that the world portrait would flee at all, because the restriction placed within him was left behind by a Saint Realm expert. So unless another Saint Realm expert helped him, otherwise, it would be impossible for him to struggle free from the restraints of Saint Lu Yun's soul. The old man glanced at Xianxia, and then he smiled. Not bad. You're much better than that bastard, Saint Lu Yun. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure vanished in the air. He's the world portrait? Meanwhile, Lu Jianyao spoke abruptly. Xianxia nodded and said, how are your injuries? Lu Jianyao said, it's nothing serious. Fortunately, you had some life water, otherwise, I would probably be crippled even if I survived. Xianxia said, don't act so foolishly in the future, all right? You've saved me on so many occasions. So how could I just stand by idly when I saw you facing danger? Lu Jianyao smiled and said, but my strength was too weak. Not only was I unable to help you, I even became a burden to you. Xianxia said, all right, let's not speak about that anymore. We'll arrive in the southern territory soon. If you want, you can come with me to the sword sect. You should like that place because it's filled with sword cultivators. Lu Jianyao suddenly asked, your wife is the current sect master of the sword sect? Xianxia nodded, and then his gaze shot towards the direction of the sword sect. Qingshi, Yushi, and my unborn child. Lu Jianyao glanced at Xianxia, bit her lips, and didn't speak further. A short while passed before Xianxia took a deep breath, and then he sat down cross-legged and immersed his consciousness into himself. Do you know how weak you are right now? The little girl shot an icy-cold gaze at Xianxia as she spoke. Xianxia nodded and said, I realize that I'm very weak when compared to those half-Saint Realm and 9th rank Monarch Realm experts. But come on, just think about it yourself. How long have I been cultivating for? How long have they been cultivating for? Weakness is weakness. What's with all the excuses? Said the little girl. Xianxia was speechless. You must attain the Monarch Realm as soon as possible. After that, the strength you possess combined with your sword domain will make it impossible for even half-saints to kill you with ease. The little girl revealed a serious expression for the first time. Xianxia asked, how strong are you right now? The little girl fell silent for a while before she said, in any case, I can't defeat those old geezers from before, but I would be if I recover my strength. Xianxia understood what she meant. She could deal with ordinary Monarch Realm experts, but she was helpless against experts at the 9th rank of the Monarch Realm. Xianxia fell silent for a short while before he said, what exactly is the tiny vortex? The little girl glanced at Xianxia and said, it's called the Primordial Pagoda, and it's a treasure that belonged to an extraordinarily formidable old Taoist from my world. It has many uses. For example, it can suppress a villain or even an entire world. Most importantly, it can create primordial violet energy to improve a person's constitution. I told you before this that the only reason you were able to attain your current accomplishments in such a short period of time was because your natural endowments and constitution had been improved. Xianxia said, can I take control of it right now? The little girl shook her head and said, I don't think so. Perhaps you can try after you attain the Monarch Realm, but it'll probably be very difficult. It isn't something that those natural Tao artifacts of your world can compare to. Xianxia continued, You should be aware that both of us are too weak right now, yet we just happen to be on the same boat. So, if you have a way to accomplish it, then don't hide it from me. Let me become stronger, otherwise you might not be able to return to the Milky Way system. The little girl said, excessive desire to become stronger fast isn't beneficial to you at all. Understand. Xianxia sighed lightly. He was naturally clearly aware of that. However, he really didn't want to experience that feeling of powerlessness again. Bang! Right at this moment, a door suddenly appeared within the tiny vortex. Xianxia was stunned, but the little girl's expression changed slightly, and then she glanced at Xianxia with a complicated expression before she said, it wants you to head in there. Looks like even it realizes that you're too weak right now. Xianxia was delighted when he heard this, and he said, in other words, I'll directly improve my strength to the monarch realm, and it would be an improvement without even the slightest side effects. You're reading too much into it. The little girl spoke coldly. It's best if you drop such thoughts. There are no shortcuts on the path of gaining strength. It's most important to take one step at a time, otherwise, you'll regret it forever. Xianxia shrugged and said, I knew it. Quickly go on in. I'm really curious about why it's looking for you, said the little girl. Xianxia nodded. The tiny vortex had been residing within him for so long, and this was the first time it had taken the initiative to contact him, so even he wanted to know why it was summoning him. Xianxia walked through the door. The area behind it was a boundless expanse of white, and he wasn't able to see anything clearly. After that, Xianxia seemed to have noticed something, and he pinched his face before he revealed an expression of astonishment, because he noticed that his figure hadn't been condensed out of his consciousness at all. It was his true body that had entered this place. What's going on? How could I have possibly entered the tiny vortex within me? Xianxia's mind was filled with questions. Suddenly, a little black pagoda that was around the size of an adult's arm appeared within his field of vision. The little pagoda gradually grew larger before Xianxia, and it didn't take more than a few breaths of time for a pagoda that was around 600 m wide and almost 3 kilometers tall to appear before him. An extremely terrifying primordial aura assaulted Xianxia's face. Xianxia was practically unable to resist this aura at all, and his knees started bending. However, his 9th-level sword intent surged out from within him when his knees were about to touch the ground. Moreover, even his sword domain had been activated, and only by utilizing both of them was Xianxia able to prevent himself from kneeling. Xianxia felt like an invisible mountain was pressing down upon him, and the pressure it exerted upon him caused the bones throughout his body to crack. It was even to the extent that breathing had become difficult for him. He wanted to stand up, but his efforts were all in vain. The pressure upon him was growing stronger and stronger, and his knees were only less than 20 centimeters away from the ground. Ah! Xianxia roared furiously and used all his strength to resist the pressure. Throughout his lifetime, he'd never knelt before the heavens nor had he knelt before the earth. So how could he possibly kneel now? He refused even if it meant death. What did kneeling represent? It represented an admission of defeat, it meant submission, it meant giving up. What was his sword Tao? It was one that advanced courageously, would rather break than bend, and would never give up. So he refused to kneel no matter what. The pressure didn't increase anymore, yet it didn't decrease as well, and it just maintained itself at its current level. Xianxia tried to stand up on numerous occasions, but his body felt like it weighed 5,000 kilograms, so not to mention standing up, even moving a little was difficult for him. Xianxia crazily poured out his sword intent with the intent to resist the pressure, but its effects were minimal, and it was only able to prevent his knees from moving closer towards the ground. Xianxia bit the tip of his tongue for the sake of keeping his mind clear, and the intense pain allowed his mind to maintain a clear state. Crack! A light crack resounded from within Xianxia, and then countless clear and melodious cracks resounded like firecrackers from within him. A wisp of shock appeared in Xianxia's eyes because the bones throughout his body were breaking inch by inch. What exactly is that pagoda trying to do? It wasn't long before Xianxia slumped to the ground because the bones throughout his body had been broken into bits. It wasn't just his bones. Even the meridians within his entire body had started to crack apart. I'm finished. That was what Yang Yi thought right now. He didn't know what the pagoda was trying to do, but he was very clearly aware that he'd become a true cripple that even life water couldn't save. Most importantly, he was wide awake right now, yet the bones and meridians throughout his body were breaking inch by inch and being transformed into powder. Such violent pain made Yang Yi feel like letting out shrill cries. However, he didn't even have the strength to open his mouth right now. This wasn't the end of it all. Yang Yi noticed to his astonishment that his skin was actually starting to fall off like he was a snake shedding its skin. He experienced pain that struck deep into his marrow. Such intense pain was 10 times more terrifying than the pain he experienced when he tempered his body with the nether ghost flame. Yang Yi greeted all the ancestors of that damnable pagoda. After all, killing him only took an instant, and there was no need to torture him like this. In next to no time, Yang Yi was covered in blood, but he still hadn't died. Meanwhile, the door on the first level of the pagoda opened up slowly, and then a strand of violet energy drifted out from within it. The violet energy arrived before Yang Yi, and then it enveloped him. After that, Yang Yi felt like his entire body was undergoing a transformation. He couldn't notice anything in the beginning, but it wasn't long before he did. His body was actually growing new bones. Is the pagoda rebuilding my bones? An overjoyed expression appeared in Yang Ye's eyes. Time flowed by slowly while the bones within Yang Ye's body grew bit by bit. However, the newly grown bones weren't white color, and they were violet instead. Dark violet. Moreover, it wasn't just his bones. Even his newly grown meridians were the same dark violet color, and those dark violet meridians were much larger than Yang Ye's original meridians. It wasn't long before Yang Ye's skin had gradually grown as well. Fortunately, his skin was normal, and it wasn't dark violet as well. Yang Yi stood up, stretched his body, and the bones throughout his body crackled. Yang Yi gazed at his body as he stretched out his hand to touch his chest. Yet he didn't feel anything unusual. He pondered deeply for a short moment before he smashed his fist forward. Bang! The air around his fist was instantly blasted into powder while space warped, and there were even numerous cracks stretching through it. How strong! Yang Ye's eyes flickered with the glow of excitement as he gazed at his fist. After all, just a casual punch of his head cracked space apart. What did that represent? It represented that the strength of his fists were equivalent to some Tao artifacts. Yang Yi stretched out his hand and made a grasping motion, and then lag appeared in his grasp before he stabbed it forward without the slightest hesitation. Clang! A clear and melodious clang resounded. Yang Yi gazed at his arm, and he noticed that he hadn't suffered the slightest injury. Moreover, there wasn't even a mark there. My physical body is strong to such an extent? Yang Yi felt slight disbelief. His current physical body was probably on par or even stronger than his past physical body when it was combined with the defensive ability of the Mortal Emperor armor. In other words, his physical body was actually on par with some Monarch Realm experts. Yang Yi turned around to gaze at the pagoda, and he noticed 3 large characters written above the door of the first level, the Primordial Pagoda. Yang Yi pondered deeply for a moment before he walked through the door. He just arrived before the door when he suddenly stopped moving because the Mortal Emperor armor and Mortal Emperor seal in his possession had suddenly flown out from within him. Both of those natural Tao artifacts were trembling violently, and it seemed like they didn't dare go through the door. Meanwhile, a little golden dragon had flown out from the Mortal Emperor armor. It flashed over to Yang Ye's shoulder, and then it grabbed Yang Ye's shoulder tightly with its claws while looking at the door with terror. Moreover, it was shaking its head incessantly as if it was telling Yang Yi not to go in. Yang Yi frowned. The little golden dragon instinctively rejected things that were a threat to it. In other words, there was something behind the door which was harmful to the little golden dragon, or perhaps there was something which could severely threaten its existence. Ha! What's wrong? You're already at the door yet still refuse to come in. Right at this moment, a chuckle resounded from within. Yang Ye's pupils constricted. Someone is actually inside there. Someone is there. Someone is actually in there? Yang Yi took a deep breath, suppressed the shock in his heart, and then walked through the door. There was a white-haired old man in a blue and white Taoist robe standing there while smiling at him, and the old man had a horsetail whisk in his hand. Yang Yi noticed that the old man's body was ethereal. Is the strand of some expert soul? Yang Yi's heart was filled with questions. The white-haired old man sized up Yang Yi before he smiled. The matters of the world are truly intriguing. This primordial pagoda of mine has actually acknowledged someone from a different world. How interesting! Yang Yi was shocked when he heard this, and he said, "Senior, are you the tiny vor?" "Oh, I mean the owner of this primordial pagoda." "I was." The white-haired old man smiled. "But not anymore, because it has acknowledged you. So you are its owner now. Unfortunately, you're too weak, and you're barely able to open up the first level. But it's fine, your body has been rebuilt by primordial violet energy. I presume that it won't be long before you'll be able to access the third level, obtain the divine techniques within it, and then traverse space to Milky Way system." The first level? The third level? Shock covered Yang Ye's face. The primordial pagoda has a total of 9 levels. Every single level is like a world. Now that you've opened up the first level, it means that you're the owner of this world. The world on this first is probably not inferior in size to the profounder continent which you're from. If you're interested in such things, you can even bring others in here to live and propagate. The white-haired old man smiled as he explained. Yang Yi gasped. This world within the pagoda isn't inferior in size to profounder continent? I'm the owner of it? Am I dreaming? The white-haired old man smiled as he gazed at Yang Ye's shocked expression. This world you're from is comparatively behind. All sorts of unbelievable divine techniques become inconceivable in your world. That's very normal. However, you'll quickly get used to it because you who possess the primordial pagoda will definitely witness even more things that they regard as inconceivable. A short while later, Yang Yi suppressed the shock in his heart and said, "Senior, you said every single level is like a world. In other words, there are 9 worlds within this pagoda." The old man nodded and said, "Each level represents a world, and every single one has even more abundant spirit energy than the last. Let me put it like this. If it takes 1,000 years to cultivate into the saint realm in the first level, it might only take 900 years in the second level. If one's natural endowment was good, then it would probably take less than 100 years in the 9th level." Yang Yi gasped again. Isn't this pagoda a little too terrifying? The mortal emperor sword and all those natural Tao artifacts are utterly trash when compared to this pagoda. Yang Yi said, "Senior, I have a question. Both you and this pagoda aren't from this world. So why have the two of you appeared here? Moreover, why has this pagoda chosen me?" The old man said, "It was caused by an accident. All those years ago, that little girl came over to my place to steal my medicinal pills, and she just happened to notice this pagoda, so she just took it with her as well. Of course, the main reason was that this pagoda wanted to go out into the world as well, so they quickly became friends. However, the two little fellows didn't control their strength well when they were traveling through worlds, and they fell into a super black hole in the end. After that, they arrived here. So that little girl was the culprit." Yang Yi was quite amused. The old man continued, "As for why it chose you, haha, I can only say that it's the will of the heavens, because you have a special bloodline. Even I'm very curious why someone with such a bloodline would be countless universes away. Unfortunately, I'm just a strand of consciousness that was projected here, and I'm unable to enter the river of time to investigate." "I have a special bloodline?" Yang Yi grew even more puzzled the more he heard. The old man smiled and said, "Do you know why you've been rejected by this world? Because you might not belong to this world at all. You were too weak in the past, so the world wasn't able to notice it. Yet now you've attained a certain level of strength, and it has. So, it's naturally impossible for it to tolerate your existence because you're like an invader to this world. You're an outsider. So that's why." Yang Yi slightly understood everything now. He'd thought that the world refused to tolerate his existence because of Luo Jun, and he'd never imagined that it was because he might have come from another world. But am I really not from this world and from the same world as the little girl and this old man? Then what about my mother and sister? Yang Yi was quite lost. Meanwhile, the old man said, "Every single level of the pagoda contains some things that I stored there. The first level is where I stored the most authentic primordial violet energy. That primordial violet energy isn't something that the violet energy within your body can compare to. It was something that was only formed after I spent 1,000 years refining and extracting it. I'd originally prepared it to refine a medicinal pill, but you've benefited from it now. Presently, your physical body has attained an undying state. Even if your soul is destroyed, your physical body will be able to exist forever. Xianxia rubbed his nose and felt slightly embarrassed, because the old man had spent 1,000 years to create it, yet he'd consumed it just like that. So he really felt quite bad and embarrassed. However, he was also overjoyed in his heart. The white-haired old man continued. I stored some medicinal pills and immortal artifacts on the second level. Those things will be very helpful to you, but you're utterly incapable of opening the second level with your current strength. Perhaps you can give it a try once you attain that so-called monarch realm of your world. As for the third level, it contains some Taoist divine techniques. However, you'll probably be unable to obtain it in a short period of time. What about the fourth, fifth, or ninth? Asked Xianxia. The old man smiled. Greedy kid. Don't reach beyond your grasp. You'll naturally find out what they contain when your strength arrives at the corresponding level. Now, remember what I'm about to say. Firstly, you must become stronger as soon as possible to access the second level and obtain the medicinal pills and immortal artifacts within it. Because this world of yours is on the verge of destruction, so you must possess formidable strength in order to protect yourself. Secondly, take good care of Little Seven. Once you access the third level and learn the divine techniques within it, then bring her back home safely, or I should say that you should return home with her. Senior, are you unable to come and get her even with your strength? Asked Xianxia. The white-haired old man shook his head and said, It's only a strand of my consciousness which is standing before you right now. I've sent countless strands of my consciousness to the worlds within innumerable universes in order to find that little girl. If this strand of my consciousness is able to return safely to my world, then I'll naturally be able to traverse space and take her back with me. But what if this strand of consciousness fails to return? Not only does it take a very long time to traverse the boundless corridors of space, it's filled with endless danger. So, I can only entrust her to you. Understand? Xianxia nodded and said, I've obtained such benefits from Senior, so it's naturally my duty to help Senior with that. Don't worry, I'll do my best to become stronger. And I'll strive to access the third level as soon as possible so that I can take her home. The old man smiled as he nodded. I'm just a strand of consciousness, so I'm unable to bring anything with me, and I can't give you any treasures as well. But I can still help you in other aspects. I noticed that you train in the sword, and your natural talent in it is extremely good as well. Since it's like that, then I'll help you improve a level in your sword Dao. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying pressure swept out from the old man and enveloped Xianxia. This pressure wasn't much different in strength from the pressure the pagoda had exerted upon him just now, but he'd been able to resist the pressure since his physical body was far superior to its previous state. However, it still wasn't easy. Activate your sword intent, said the old man. Xianxia hurriedly utilized his sword intent to resist the pressure. However, his sword intent didn't reduce the pressure he experienced. On the contrary, the pressure he suffered grew more and more terrifying. Cold sweat gradually started flowing down Xianxia's forehead, and it wasn't long before his entire body was drenched by cold sweat. Xianxia noticed that his sword intent seemed to be undergoing a transformation. Yes, he could clearly sense his sword intent transforming incessantly while the pressure acted upon him. This discovery delighted Xianxia. He knew that the old man might be trying to improve his sword intent by a level and allow him to attain perfection in sword intent. When he thought up to this point, Xianxia crazily poured out his sword intent to resist the pressure. After an unknown period of time passed, the pressure on Xianxia's body had vanished. Bang! Countless fine swords that were the size of fingers surged out from within Xianxia. These swords seemed material yet seemed ethereal at the same time. It was like they were both ethereal and material, and it was impossible to distinguish clearly. The fine swords grew larger and larger in number. In the end, The fine swords covered an area of about 1 kilometer around Yang Yi, and their numbers were still increasing. Perfection in sword intent. Everything is a sword. Yang Yi took a deep breath while excitement flickered in his eyes. Every single one of these fine swords wasn't weaker to a heaven-rank treasure in might. At this moment, he was confident that he only had to utilize sword intent to kill 5th-rank Exalt Realm experts. Just like how in Nanjing had blasted Elder Yun flying by merely utilizing her combined intent and shouting, "Fuck off" at Elder Yun. Yang Yi bowed respectfully to the white-haired old man and said, "Thank you, senior." The white-haired old man smiled and said, "I hope we'll be able to meet soon. Farewell." The old man vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. After the old man left, Yang Yi fell silent on the spot for a short while. Everything that had occurred today felt like a dream to him. A special bloodline? Perfection in sword intent? Every level is a world. A long time passed before Yang Yi shook his head and chuckled. He stopped thinking about all that and he left the primordial pagoda. "Yang Yi, you're finally back." When Yang Yi appeared once more on the back of the divine gold dragon, he saw Lu Jianyao's face, which was covered in anxiousness. Yang Yi was just about to speak when Lu Jianyao hurriedly said, "Don't explain anything. We don't have any time now. Quickly. Let's return quickly to the Southern Territory. My father sent me a transmission talisman just now. The Origin School, Ghost Sect, Flower Palace, and Bright Moon Sect have joined force and suddenly attacked the Sword Sect. The Sword Sect is probably on the verge of collapse now." A wisp of a ferocious expression instantly surged onto Yang Ye's face when he heard this. The Southern Territory. At this moment, the Sword Sect was surrounded by the forces of the Origin School, Ghost Sect, Flower Palace, and Bright Moon Sect. If it wasn't for the assistance of the Grand Qin Empire and Dark Beast Empire, then the Sword Sect would have probably been conquered by now. In the sky, Yuan Tian had his hands behind his back while 3 elders of the Flower Palace, the Sect Master of the Ghost Sect, and the Bright Moon Sect's Master stood in front of him. Yuan Tian said, "Elder Qian, are you sure that Yang Yi will definitely die?" Qian Huagu had a gloomy expression on her face as she said, "He's dead for sure. The Mortal Emperor has gathered over 29th rank Exalt Realm experts to deal with him. Moreover, at least 2 9th rank Monarch Realm experts of the Exalted Hand Empire have been dispatched as well. So it would be impossible to protect that little bastard even if Xiao Tianji and the Demon Emperor try to save him. He. The Ghost King laughed gloomily and said, "What extravagance! 2 9th rank Monarch Realm experts. Looks like Yang Yi has even made the Exalted Han Empire feel threatened. Otherwise, it's impossible for it to dispatch 2 9th rank Monarch Realm experts to deal with him and even offend the Demon Emperor. The Exalted Han Empire doesn't want another existence like the Sword Sect's founding ancestor to appear in the world." It was the Bright Moon Sect's master who spoke those words, and his name was Kuang Yu. He didn't want to participate in the enmity between Yang Yi and the Exalted Han Empire, but he had no choice when facing a colossus like the Exalted Han Empire. Even the Bright Moon Sect had no other choice because it was too weak. Yuan Tian nodded slightly and said, "Once Yang Yi is dead, the Mortal Emperor will be able to obtain the world portrait, and then the Mortal Emperor's army would instantly arrive at the Southern Territory. At that time, the Grand Qin Empire and the Dark Beast Empire would be nothing worth worrying about. Even if Yang Yi survives, so long as we conquer the Sword Sect and capture both his women and younger sister, then it would still end in his death. Leave his women to me." Qian Huagu had quite a ferocious expression on her face as she said, "He destroyed my Flower Palace's grave of flowers that day. I'm going to make his women suffer endless torture. Haha. Actually, I don't want Yang Yi to die right now because I want him to watch as his women are tortured and humiliated to death, and I want to watch the helplessness on his face." Yuan Tian glanced at Qian Huagu while a trace of coldness arose in their hearts. The Flower Palace truly wishes for nothing more than make Yang Yi suffer the most unimaginable torture. Right at this moment, Yuan Tian suddenly looked towards the distance before a cold glow flashed through his eyes, and he said, "The founding emperor and beast emperor really refused to just leave. Space fluctuated before the founding emperor and beast emperor appeared before Yuan Tian and the others. There was resentment in Qian Huagu's eyes when she saw the beast emperor and founding emperor. If it weren't for the two of them, the sword sect would have been destroyed over 10 times by now. Founding emperor, beast emperor, Yang Ye's fate is sealed. Once the world portrait falls into the mortal emperor's hands, then your Grand Qin Empire and Beast Empire will be annihilated in an instant. Now, both of you only have one last chance. Submit to the mortal emperor, allow the Southern Territory to be united, and allow the mortal emperor to obtain the faith energy of the Southern Territory. In that way, perhaps you'll be able to preserve your bloodlines. Otherwise, humph! Qian Huagu spoke in a low voice. The founding emperor glanced at them and said, "The thing I regret the most is that I didn't risk everything and annihilate all of your sects after the destruction of the Shang dynasty." "Stop talking big." Yuan Tian grinned and said, "Founding emperor, even though your Grand Qin Empire's overall strength is superior to us, while we wouldn't be able to destroy your Grand Qin Empire with our joint forces, it's definitely possible for us to cripple your empire. Moreover, the Dark Beast Empire was eyeing your Grand Qin Empire with hostility at that time. So, it wasn't that you didn't annihilate us, but you didn't dare to." The founding emperor said, "Yuan Tian, you're the master of a sect at any rate. I really can't figure out why you're so willing to be Luo Jun's dog." Yuan Tian smiled. "My actions of siding with the mortal emperor conform with the will of the world. How could I be considered to be his dog? Moreover, once the mortal emperor has conquered the Southern Territory, we won't just be able to continue our inheritance in the Southern Territory, we'll even be able to establish our sects in the Central Territory and the other territories. At that time, I'll become the greatest sect master in the history of my origin school." Hee. Yuan Tian is right. Meanwhile, the Ghost King said, "Founding Emperor, all of you refuse to obey the will of the heavens and insist on defying the heavens. The consequences of that will probably be very horrible. Ha ha ha." Meanwhile, Qian Huagu suddenly said, "There's no need to continue. We're people of different beliefs, so there's no common ground to understand each other. Let's just annihilate the sword sect first. Do you think you can do it just because you want to?" The Beast Emperor spoke with disdain. Qian Huagu laughed coldly and said, "Beast Emperor, the amount of Monarch Realm experts on both our sides are almost the same. However, the joint forces of our 4 sects surpass your forces when it comes to Exalt Realm experts. Unless both of you are willing to dispatch all the elites of your Grand Qin Empire and Dark Beast Empire. Otherwise, the Sword Sect will definitely be destroyed today. They won't dispatch all their elites for the Sword Sect's sake." Meanwhile, the Ghost King chuckled. "If Yang Yi was still alive and obtained the world portrait, then I believe that they would definitely stop at nothing to protect the Sword Sect. Unfortunately, Yang Yi is dead, so it isn't beneficial for them to continue helping the Sword Sect. So, they won't be willing to suffer losses in order to protect the Sword Sect." The Beast Emperor and Founding Emperor fell silent. Yuan Tian and the others laughed coldly without end. A short moment passed before the Beast Emperor stretched out his hand and waved it. A command token shot into space as he said, "All dark beasts at the Exalt rank within the Grand Myriad Mountains are to come to the Sword Sect. Those who disobey shall be punished with death." The expressions on the faces of Yuan Tian and the others changed. They hadn't expected that the Beast Emperor would actually be so resolute and still dare to protect the Sword Sect at a time like this. The Founding Emperor took a long glance at the Beast Emperor before he waved his right hand, and then a decree flew towards the Grand Qin Empire. At the same time, his voice appeared throughout the entire Grand Qin Empire. "All military officers of the Grand Qin Empire who are at the Exalt Realm, put aside everything you're doing and come immediately to the Sword Sect. The price of disobedience is the annihilation of 9 generations." "Good. Very good." Qian Huagu's face was livid with rage, and she said, "Founding Emperor, Beast Emperor, since both of you want to send your forces to death, then we'll fulfill your wishes." As soon as she finished speaking, Situ Hai appeared here, and 10,000 Spirit Realm experts appeared along with him. The Soul Eater Corps. Both the founding emperor and beast emperor's expressions changed slightly when they saw those 10,000 spirit realm experts. They would naturally not be afraid if it were just 10,000 ordinary spirit realm experts. But these were no ordinary spirit realm experts. All of them had been painstakingly fostered by the exalted Han Empire. Even though there was only 10,000 of them, their strength was definitely comparable to a few hundred exalt realm experts. Situ Hai didn't hesitate or waste his breath at all. Kill! The wings on the backs of those 10,000 spirit realm experts flapped, and they flew towards the sword sect on the ground below. The sword sect. It had practically no strength to resist the siege of four sects. Besides its main peak, the sword sect had lost all the other peaks. At this moment, it had truly suffered heavy losses, and even if it were to survive this attack, it was utterly impossible for the sword sect to recover without over 100 years of time. Su Qingshi led the members of the sword sect to stand outside Sky Hall. Xiao Yushi, Yang Yao, and Lu Wan'er were on her left while the disciples of the sword sect were standing behind them. However, there were only a few thousand disciples there, and most of them were injured. The Grand Formation won't be able to hold on for long. Sect Master, should we surrender? Meanwhile, one of the elders spoke abruptly. Many disciples of the sword sect immediately glared angrily at that elder, but even more of them remained silent. Su Qingshi turned around to look at that elder, yet that elder didn't dare meet her gaze and lowered his head slightly. Su Qingshi glanced at the other disciples of the sword sect for a while before she said, "Even though all of you are disciples of the sword sect, all of you have the right to choose. If you want to leave, then feel free to do so. I won't stop any one of you. However, if the sword sect survives this attack, then all of you will cease to be disciples of the sword sect and will be forbidden from utilizing any techniques that you've learned from the sword sect. Otherwise, I'll definitely kill you no matter where you run." All of them fell silent. Quite some time passed before that elder who spoke earlier stepped forward, and then he sighed slightly. "Qingshi, I watched you grow up, but I don't want to see you making the same mistake over and over again, and I can't allow you to lead the sword sect to its destruction. Truthfully speaking, the Origin School's members have contacted me, and they promised to spare the sword sect if we surrender. So, Qingshi, hand over the position of sect master." "Han Yu, you actually colluded with the enemy," one of the elders shouted furiously. A small group of disciples were exasperated as well. Elder Yu Hong, Elder Qing He, Elder Tai Jian. 2 out of the 3 strongest Exalt Realm experts of our sword sect are injured while the last one is dead. Besides that, we have less than 50 other Exalt Realm profounders. On the other hand, the joint forces of the 4 sects possess a few hundred Exalt Realm profounders at least. "Qingshi, why don't you tell me how we should fight them?" said Han Yu. "Do you really think the Origin School and the others will spare us?" Qing He spoke furiously. "Even if the Origin School agreed to spare us, would the Ghost Sect and Flower Palace do the same? They are sworn enemies of our sect, so do you really think that they would spare us?" Han Yu said indifferently, "They only want the lives of those related to Yang Yi. How audacious!" Qing He drew his sword and pointed it at Han Yu as he said, "Han Yu, are you trying to hand the sect master over to the enemy? Aren't you afraid of the previous sect master's wrath? He won't be able to return." Han Yu spoke in a low voice. Qing He was exasperated, and he was just about to attack when Su Qingshi rubbed her bulging belly before taking a glance at the remaining members of the sword sect. She said, "How many of you are of the same mind as Elder Han?" After a moment of silence, some of the disciples walked over to Han Yu's side, and then more and more gradually went over to his side. It wasn't long before less than 1,000 disciples were standing on Su Qingshi's side. Moreover, 35 of the 50 Exalt Realm experts here had stood by Han Yu's side. "All of you have no intention to leave and want me to step down from my position instead, right?" Su Qingshi spoke indifferently. "Sect Master, please step down." Han Yu bowed slightly to Su Qingshi. He didn't dare to leave no room to maneuver as he still wanted to leave a way out for himself. Otherwise, he would have forced Su Qingshi to step down a long time ago. "Sect Master, please step down." All the disciples behind Han Yu bowed slightly to Su Qingshi and spoke in unison. Sister-in-law. Little Yao revealed a fearful expression as she held tightly onto Su Qingshi's hand and said, "Don't worry. Big brother will return. Once he does, he'll definitely kill all of these rascals who bullied you." Su Qingshi grinned as she rubbed little Yao's head. The expressions of those disciples standing behind Han Yu changed when they heard little Yao. Yang Yi was naturally not someone unfamiliar to them. Even though Yang Yi was only at the spirit realm, even Han Yu didn't dare say that he was confident in his ability to defeat Yang Yi. Most importantly, Yang Yi had the backing of a monarch realm expert. Would he let us go if we force his wife and younger sister to death? When they thought up to this point, many of them started to reveal hesitance. Han Yu's face changed slightly when he noticed that, and he hurriedly said, "Yang Yi won't be able to return anymore. That's nonsense." Little Yao glared angrily at Han Yu. Han Yu laughed coldly and said, "The mortal emperor has gathered 29th rank Exalt Realm experts to deal with him. Even if Yang Yi is possessed by the founding ancestor, he would still die for sure when facing 29th rank Exalt Realm experts. Once the mortal emperor gains possession of the world portrait, the mortal emperor's army will arrive instantly at the southern territory. At that time, not to mention our tiny sword sect, even the Grand Qin Empire and Dark Beast Empire will be destroyed. So, at this moment, our sword sect must side with the mortal emperor for its survival." The others behind Han Yu instantly heaved sighs of relief and seemed like a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Su Qingshi and Xiao Yushi's expressions changed slightly, and a cold glow flashed through their eyes. Bang! Right at this moment, an enormous explosion resounded from outside the grand formation of the sword sect, and it caused the entire main peak of the sword sect to tremble violently. All of them looked over and saw 10,000 spirit realm experts launching a frenzied attack against the grand formation. At this moment, the grand formation, which was already at a critical condition, started to crack apart under the attacks of those 10,000 spirit realm experts. "It's the Soul Eater Core. It's the Soul Eater Corpse." Meanwhile, Han Yu revealed an excited expression as he turned to look at Su Qingshi, and there was a ferocious glint in his eyes. "Sect Master, please step down, otherwise, don't blame me for not giving you any face." If Su Qingshi were to surrender now and allow him to open the grand formation, then he would definitely win recognition from the origin school. But if they blasted it open by force instead, then he would have made no contribution. So, he'd lost all his patience. "Sect Master, please step down." Countless disciples of the sword sect spoke in unison. All of them didn't reveal any guilt from their eyes any longer, nor was there any fear in their eyes. There was only a fierce glow in there. Xiao Yushi placed her hand on the hilt of her saber, while the profound energy within her surged. Some of the disciples behind Su Qingshi hesitated for a moment before they walked over to Han Yu's side. It wasn't long before less than 600 disciples remained on Su Qingshi's side. Han Yu was overjoyed when he witnessed this scene. At this moment, Su Qingshi could be said to have been rendered powerless, and she didn't have the strength to resist anymore. A wisp of sorrow flashed through Su Qingshi's eyes. This is what the disciples of the sword sect are like. They would rather surrender just to live? If the disciples from the sword sect's prime found out about this, would they be enraged to the point of crawling out of their coffins? How pitiable! Qingshi, out of consideration for our past relationship, I won't make things difficult for you if you step down and don't resist. I'll just hand you over to the origin school, and your fate will be up to your own luck. If you refuse to realize your errors and insist on leading the disciples of my sword sect to death, then don't blame me for being ruthless." The grand formation was growing thinner and thinner, so Han Yu really didn't have even a trace of patience left. Su Qingshi drew her sword slowly and pointed it at Han Yu. She said, "The sword sect only has disciples that die in battle, and it has none who surrender. I declare that all of you aren't disciples of the sword sect from today onward. If the sword sect survives today, then I'll definitely reclaim everything that all of you have gained from the sword sect." "You're courting death." Han Yu had a ferocious expression on his face as he said, "Attack!" An elder behind Han Yu had just drawn his sword when a cold glow flashed by, and then a strand of saber chi instantly shot through his neck before his head instantly flew off into the air. Everyone here looked at Xianxia with astonishment. Han Yu had astonishment in his eyes as well. He hadn't expected that this woman who usually didn't like to speak would actually possess such a terrifying strength. After all, that elder was a third-rank Exalt Realm expert. Yet he hadn't even been able to resist a single swing of her saber. "Who exactly are you?" Han Yu shouted. Xianxia didn't speak, and she just kept her hand on the hilt of her saber. Meanwhile, Xianxia said, "It's you who are truly leading the sword sect to destruction. Let's put aside whether my husband has really died. Even if he did, once you lead the sword sect to side with the origin school, then the disciples of the sword sect would definitely suffer even if they aren't killed by the ghost sect and Flower Palace. Just ask yourselves this. Do you really think the Flower Palace and ghost sect will treat all of you well? Moreover, if my husband is fine yet all of you handed us over to the origin school, I guarantee that it won't be just all of you, even everyone related to all of you will be annihilated by him." Xianxia was very clearly aware that Yang Yi didn't like the sword sect at all. The only reason why he'd spared the sword sect was her. It was because she was the sect master of the sword sect. Under such circumstances, Yang Yi would definitely not act against the sword sect no matter what. However, if the sword sect were to hand her, Xianxia, and little Yao over just to survive, she was certain that Yang Yi would kill every single member of the sword sect. That wasn't something she wanted to see happen. It wasn't just the disciples behind Han Yu whose expressions changed when they heard Xianxia. Even Han Yu's expression had changed. Even he was afraid of that madman Yang Yi. After all, Yang Yi was an existence who dared to destroy the graves of the Flower Palace's ancestors. So was there anything which he didn't dare to do? Bang! Right at this moment, the grand formation suddenly shook violently, and then countless cracks appeared on it. The hearts of the sword sect's disciples shook because the grand formation was about to be destroyed. Once it was destroyed, then the fate that awaited them was obvious. There was no fear on Han Yu's face, and he spoke ferociously. "Disciples of the sword sect, heed my command. Yang Yi is dead, and the mortal emperor will arrive at the southern territory soon. If all of you don't want to die, then draw your swords and capture Xianxia. The origin school and the other sects have promised me that they'll only kill those related to Yang Yi. So, draw your swords for the sake of survival." Swoosh! Countless disciples drew their swords and pointed them at Xianxia and the others. "Kill!" Han Yu roared fiercely as his figure flashed, and he charged towards Xianxia's group with a few other elders. Right at this moment, a colossus appeared in the sky above the sword sect. Roar! A dragon roar resounded throughout the sky, and the pressure it emanated caused the figures of countless disciples to tremble and almost fall to their knees. A divine gold dragon. All the disciples of the sword sect stopped what they were doing and looked up at the enormous golden dragon with disbelief. A divine gold dragon. That's a divine gold dragon. What's it doing in the southern territory? High above in the sky, the expressions on the faces of Yuan Tian and the others changed drastically, and it was especially so for Qian Huagu. At this moment, Qian Huagu's face had transformed from shock to disbelief before stopping at resentment, because she noticed that there was a person on the back of the golden dragon. That person was Yang Yi. The founding emperor and beast emperor exchanged glances and smiled, because they'd made the right bet. Since Yang Yi was alive, then the world portrait was very likely to be in his hands. So long as it hadn't fallen into Luo Jun's hands, then it would be so easy for Luo Jun to conquer the southern territory. How could this be possible? How could this be possible? How could he still be alive? Qian Huagu muttered with disbelief. Yuan Tian and the others gazed at Situ Hai while the latter revealed a gloomy expression, because he hadn't expected that Yang Yi was actually still alive. My God! Even 29th rank Exalt Realm experts weren't enough to kill that fellow, Yang Yi. Right at this moment, a wave of fluctuation arrived in the space before Situ Hai. It was a transmission. Yuan Tian and the others noticed that Situ Hai's expression was growing more and more unsightly. In the end, he even revealed terror on his face. The hearts of Yuan Tian and the others sank when they saw that. A short while passed before Situ Hai spoke in a heavy voice. Yang Yi has attained the Exalt Realm. The joint forces of 29th rank Exalt Realm experts were almost annihilated by him because of Yang Ye's sword domain. Besides that, Yang Yi has a master at the Half-Saint Realm. From today onward, the Monarch Realm experts of my Exalted Han Empire are forbidden from attacking him, and the Monarch Realm experts of all territories are forbidden from attacking him as well. What? A half-saint? At this moment, all of their faces were covered in shock, and it included the Beast Emperor and Founding Emperor. What was a half-saint? Half-saints were invincible existences in this world that was without saints. What did Yang Ye's master being at the half-saint realm signify? It signified that even the Exalted Han Empire wouldn't dare send Monarch Realm experts to kill Yang Yi. How could this be possible? How could this be possible? Chen Huagu was ghastly pale. At this moment, she was really filled with regret, heartfelt regret. If they hadn't killed Yang Ye's mother and allowed both Yang Yi and his mother to join the Flower Palace, then the Flower Palace would instantly rise above the Origin School right now, and it wouldn't even be difficult for the Flower Palace to move to the Central Territory right now. Because there was no sect or power that would dare to offend a half-saint. But now, it was very likely that the Flower Palace would have to face the rage of a half-saint. So, unless the founding ancestor of the Flower Palace returned, otherwise, how could it possibly resist a half-saint? The Exalted Han Empire did possess a half-saint. But would that half-saint lend the Flower Palace a hand? It wasn't very likely. So what if Yang Yi is still alive? Meanwhile, Yuan Tian said, "We're definitely destroying the Sword Sect today." Situ Hai nodded and said, "Even though Yang Yi is at the Exalt Realm, he's all alone in the end. It's impossible for him to resist the joint forces of a few tens of thousands of Spirit Realm Profounders and almost 1,000 Exalt Realm experts. Everyone Monarch Realm experts can't act against him. So, all of your disciples are probably going to perish here if you continue conserving the strength of your respective sects." Chen Huagu waved her right hand, and then a flower flew towards the Flower Palace while she spoke fiercely. "Disciples of my Flower Palace, come to the Sword Sect. All who disobey this command will be punished with death." The Ghost King didn't hesitate at all, and he immediately sent an order back to the Ghost Sect for all its disciples to rush to the Sword Sect. He refused to give the Sword Sect a chance to rise up in the world no matter the cost. Yuan Tian was slightly hesitant. Meanwhile, Situ Hai glanced coldly at Yuan Tian and said, "Brother Yuan, the Mortal Emperor has given the order that the Sword Sect must be conquered no matter what. And it's best if we're able to capture Yang Ye's loved ones. Your Origin School wouldn't hold back at such a critical moment, right?" Yuan Tian's expression changed slightly, and then he said, "Of course not." He immediately gave the order as he spoke, and he commanded all the disciples of the Origin School to travel to the Sword Sect. The sect master of the Bright Moon Sect had no choice at all, and he ordered the disciples of his sect to rush to the Sword Sect as well. Meanwhile, the Beast Emperor suddenly withdrew a command token and tossed it towards the Grand Myriad Mountains. "I order all dark beasts at the king rank or above to come to the Sword Sect." Once he finished giving the order, he chuckled and said, "The Sword Sect is right in front of my Grand Myriad Mountains, so my Dark Beast army will arrive very soon. Let me see how all of you'll destroy the Sword Sect." The founding emperor had tossed a decree towards the Grand Qin Empire as well. However, he didn't reveal how many troops of the empire would be coming. Situ Hai and the others revealed quite unsightly expressions. If he didn't possess the assistance of the Dark Beast Empire and Grand Qin Empire, then they would be able to destroy the Sword Sect regardless of how monstrous Yang Ye's strength was. But if these two empires were to assist Yang Yi, then it wouldn't be easy for them to destroy the Sword Sect even if they had the 10,000 Spirit Realm experts of the Soul Eater Corps. Of course, it would be an entirely different situation if the entire Soul Eater Corps were to be here. The Dark Beast Empire and the Grand Qin Empire will be annihilated in the future. Situ Hai spoke in a low voice. The founding ancestor smiled with indifference and said, "We'll be waiting." Bang! Right at this moment, the joint forces of those 10,000 Spirit Realm Profounders blasted apart the Sword Sect's sect guarding Grand Formation, and pieces of it rained down throughout the surroundings. The Soul Eater core flew towards Sky Hall. "Ha! Perhaps we'll be able to destroy the Sword Sect right now." Situ Hai laughed coldly when he saw this. A wisp of worry flashed through the eyes of the founding emperor and beast emperor. We surrender. We surrender." When they saw the Soul Eater core, Han Yu and all the disciples behind him quickly started to shout and proclaim their surrender. At this moment, they didn't have even the slightest intention to resist when they saw the imposing aura emanated by the 10,000 spirit realm profounders of the Soul Eater core. Su Qingshi, Xiao Yushi, and Little Yao's gazes had descended onto the divine gold dragon because someone they were concerned about was standing atop it. At this moment, all of them truly heaved sighs of relief because Yang Yi was alive. Right when the swarm of spirit realm profounders from the Soul Eater core was about to arrive before Sky Hall, the divine gold dragon in the sky roared furiously, and then it dived down like a mountain. The troops from the Soul Eater core were horrified, and they hurriedly knocked their bows and shot 10,000 armor-piercing arrows into the sky. All of the arrows struck the enormous divine gold dragon. Clang, clang, clang. A string of clear and melodious sounds of collision resounded. Everyone here watched with astonishment as those armor-piercing arrows actually broke into two upon striking the divine gold dragon. Bang! Meanwhile, the enormous divine gold dragon smashed down into the army of 10,000 spirit realm profounders from the Soul Eater core. The entire main peak of the Sword Sect trembled as countless howls of pain resounded. Besides those that had fled quickly and survived, just this collision alone had wiped out over 6,000 members of the Soul Eater core. That's a divine gold dragon. Wait, that divine gold dragon possesses the legendary divine dragon armor. How could that be possible? How could a divine gold dragon activate its divine dragon armor to protect Yang Yi? Could it be that the dragon race is standing on Yang Ye's side? How could that be? Situ Hai muttered with disbelief. A wisp of surprise flashed through the eyes of the founding emperor and beast emperor. Obviously, they hadn't expected that a member of the dragon race would actually activate the divine dragon armor of legend to protect Yang Yi. Roar! The divine gold dragon roared at the Soul Eater core, and then a strand of dragon breath sprayed out, causing some of the nearby troops to be instantly blasted apart. The remaining members of the Soul Eater core were astounded, but none of them chose to flee. Retreat quickly. Meanwhile, Situ Hai spoke hastily from high above in the sky. After all, he wouldn't be able to avoid being held accountable if all of these members of the Soul Eater core were to be wiped out here. Right at his moment, a figure charged into the army, and then countless rays of light flashed incessantly. Just a few breaths of time passed before countless shrill cries resounded in the sky above the Sword Sect. Yang Yi! How dare you! Situ Hao's eyes almost split apart from rage. He was just about to act when he seemed to have thought of something and stopped once more. He had no choice but to watch with resentment as Yang Yi slaughtered them incessantly. A half-saint wasn't an existence that he could defy. The founding emperor grinned when he saw this. Yang Yi had the protection of a Saint Realm expert, so Monarch Realm experts couldn't act against him. In other words, would there be any Exalt Realm profounder throughout the continent who dared to boast about being able to kill Yang Yi? Even the martial god of legend would probably be unable to accomplish that. So, no matter what, Yang Yi was about to be the nightmare of all Exalt Realm profounders in the Southern Territory. The joint forces of Yang Yi and the Divine Gold Dragon took less than 15 minutes to annihilate all the remaining forces from the Soul Eater core. Both man and dragon stopped for a moment, and then they charged towards the disciples of the four sects that had surrounded the Sword Sect. All of these disciples were just weaklings who were even more inferior, so they didn't have any ability to resist Yang Yi and the Divine Gold Dragon. It was a slaughter, a complete slaughter. Yuan Tian and the others had terrifyingly gloomy expressions on their faces. Yet they were helpless. Those disciples couldn't fight Yang Yi and the Divine Gold Dragon, nor could they flee from them. So what else could they do? It's Big Brother. Everyone within the Sword Sect had seen Yang Ye's face clearly when he charged into the Soul Eater core, and Little Yao even leaped with joy. Su Qingshi and Xiao Yushi revealed gentle expressions in their eyes, and their hearts felt indescribably relaxed when they saw Yang Yi. It was especially so for Xianxia, because she was on the verge of collapse from the pressure of managing the sword sect and the hopeless situation she faced just now. Fortunately, Yang Yi had finally returned. On the other hand, Han Yu and the others behind him had turned ghastly pale, especially when they saw Yang Yi slaughter the Soul Eater Corps like he was slaughtering chickens. The facts before their eyes told them that Yang Yi hadn't just survived. He'd become even stronger. Suddenly, Han Yu revealed a ferocious expression and said, "Yang Yi is alive. I'm sure all of you are clearly aware of his character. So long as we capture Xianxia and his younger sister, only then would we have a chance at survival. Otherwise, it'll be our turn once he's done with them. Fight by my side if you don't want to die." Han Yu was just about to charge forward when two elders standing behind him had suddenly crossed their swords in front of his neck. This scene stunned all the disciples here. Even Xianxia revealed a trace of surprise in her eyes. Han Yu roared furiously, "Qing Yu! Qing Li, what are you doing?" Qing Yu paid no attention to Han Yu, and he gazed at Xianxia and said, "Sect Master, we realize our crimes are unforgivable, but we're willing to atone for our crimes. We don't hope that the sect will take us back, and we only hope that Sect Master will spare our lives." "You!" Han Yu was furious. The other elder, Qing Li, said, "Sect Master, even though we've committed a crime, we've made contributions to the sect as well. Moreover, we accompanied Sect Master to defend the sect until the last moment just now. I hope that Sect Master will consider all of that and forgive us. We're willing to swear that we will definitely not go against the sword sect in the future. Sect Master, please forgive us." All of the disciples who had chosen to betray the sword sect just now bowed to Xianxia and spoke in unison. A wisp of self-ridicule arose on the corners of Xianxia's mouth as she gazed at these disciples because her influence as the sword sect's master was actually inferior to her husband. Even though it was like that, Xianxia felt even more pride in her heart because that person who they feared was her man. "Ha ha!" Right at this moment, Han Yu suddenly roared with laughter, while his face was covered with ridicule. He said, "Qing Li, Qing Yu, do you really think Yang Yi would let both of you go if you do this? He won't. With his character, he won't just kill all of you, he'll even slaughter your entire families. How stupid." Ha ha ha! Qing Yu and Qing Li's expressions changed, and then hesitance appeared in their eyes as they gazed at Yang Yi, who had a ferocious expression on his face. Xianxia was just about to speak some words and calm them when Xiao Yushi stopped her, and then indicated that she should continue watching. "Yang Yi is about to annihilate all of them. Once he's done with them, all of us will be his next targets. So long as we join forces and work together now, then we'll definitely be able to restrain Xianxia and his younger sister before he's done. As long as we captured them, then would we have to worry about being unable to make Yang Yi hold back from killing us?" Han Yu continued, trying to bring them back to his side. "Let's do it!" Qing Yu shouted and withdrew his sword. Qing Li hastily withdrew his sword as well when he saw this. After that, both of them and all the other Exalt Realm experts on their side created spatial barriers around Xianxia, while the others on their side charged towards Xianxia, Xiao Yushi, and Little Yao. At this moment, they'd chosen to risk everything for their survival. Xianxia had practically no ability to resist when facing the joint forces of over 30 Exalt Realm experts. The space around her was instantly locked down, and the sight of this caused delight to appear on the faces of Han Yu and the others. Han Yu's hand moved forward to grab Xianxia, because he would only be at ease when he had Xianxia in his hands. Suddenly, Yang Yi appeared in front of Xianxia, and it caused Han Yu's expression to change drastically. He was just about to withdraw his hand when Yang Yi had grabbed his hand, and then cracking resounded as Yang Yi forcefully tore off Han Yu's hand. Han Yu let out a shrill cry as he moved backwards repeatedly, and he gazed at Yang Yi with astonishment. Bang! Yang Yi smashed his fist forward, and then the spatial cages created by over 30 Exalt Realm experts was instantly blasted apart. Everyone here gazed at Yang Yi with astonishment. "Big brother!" Little Yao leaped up and hugged Yang Yi before she spoke excitedly. "You're finally here. Meanwhile, one of the elders of Sword Sect tore the space before him apart, and he was just about to flee. However, he'd only just torn space apart when a ray of light pierced through his head, and then it exploded apart. All the others were horrified by this scene. He's even able to annihilate Exalt Realm experts with ease. How strong is Yang Yi? Yang Yi didn't even spare a glance at that fellow, and he just stretched out his hand to rub little Yao's head. And then he looked at Su Qingshi and Xiao Yushi. He revealed a slightly forced smile when he saw them, and he felt quite guilty in his heart. Both of them were proud geniuses, but he wasn't able to provide a single one of them with his undivided attention. That was really unfair to the two of them. "You're back." Su Qingshi smiled and spoke softly. Xiao Yushi just gazed at him and didn't speak. Yang Yi nodded. He walked over to them, took their hands and said, "Let's deal with our familial affairs once the matter here is resolved. All right?" Both of their figures stiffened, and then they nodded. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they didn't seem hostile to each other like he'd imagined, but he couldn't say for sure. After all, they were both quiet and reticent women. So while they seemed very calm on the surface, no one knew what they were actually thinking. Alas, it looks like the joys of having two wives isn't so easily enjoyed. Yang Yi sighed lightly in his heart. He shook his head, and then he turned around and gazed at Han Yu's group. All of them instantly couldn't help but take a few steps back, and the legs of some disciples had even started trembling. Some of them had thought of fleeing, but they'd instantly abandoned such thoughts when they witnessed Yang Ye's strength. After all, the fate of that elder in the Exalt realm was the best example. Anyone who dared to flee right now would definitely die. Yang Yi shook his head as he gazed at them, and he was especially disappointed by those Exalt realm experts. Needless to say, these Exalt realm profounders were really not just slightly inferior to those Exalt realm profounders of the Central Territory, and it was especially so if they were compared to Luo Jun's subordinates. Yang Yi turned around and gazed at Su Qingshi before he said, "You deal with them." Since Su Qingshi was the Sword Sect's master, then she had to develop her ability to do so. It wasn't beneficial to her at all if he were to make the decision. Su Qingshi fell silent. Those disciples who'd betrayed the Sword Sect just now knelt down immediately, and they begged, "Sect Master, please spare us. We'll definitely not dare to do that again. Please spare us." Some of the elders at the Exalt realm hesitated for a moment before they bowed to Su Qingshi and said, "Please forgive us, Sect Master." At this moment, an elder on Su Qingshi's side hesitated for a moment before he said, "Sect Master, the other four sects will definitely not stop, and they'll surely launch another attack. Our Sword Sect is in need of their strength right now. So, please, our reinforcements will be here soon." Yang Yi interrupted that elder. That elder's body trembled as he understood Yang Ye's intentions. Everyone else here understood Yang Ye's intentions. The figures of those disciples who'd betrayed the Sword Sect started trembling even more violently. Some wanted to fight to the death, but they sadly lacked the courage to do so. Su Qingshi glanced at Yang Yi, and then she glanced at those disciples who were kneeling on the ground. There was still some hesitance in her eyes. After all of them were disciples of the Sword Sect in the past, and some were even her seniors. She was really unable to kill them. "What do you think husband would do if their rebellion succeeded, and they handed you over to the Origin School or Flower Palace?" Meanwhile, Xiao Yushi spoke abruptly from the side. Su Qingshi's heart trembled when she heard this, and then the hesitance in her eyes vanished. "Yang Yi, since you refuse to let us live, then we won't let you have it easy as well." Meanwhile, Han Yu roared ferociously as he charged at Yang Yi, Su Qingshi, and the others. His stomach started swelling up, and it wasn't long before he seemed like he'd been pregnant for 9 months. Countless strands of violent energy surged incessantly from within him. It was self-detonation. The Exalt Realm experts behind Han Yu hesitated for a moment before more than 10 of them pounced towards Yang Ye's group as well. Because as far as they were concerned, they had no chances of survival, so it was better to just drag Yang Ye's group down with them. The expressions on the faces of Su Qingshi and the others changed when they saw these Exalt Realm experts pouncing over with the intention of detonating themselves. However, a strand of invisible force enveloped all of them. Sword domain. Han Yu and the others seemed like they'd seen a ghost, and they gazed at Yang Yi with disbelief. In the next moment, bang! An enormous explosion resounded as over 10 Exalt Realm experts exploded apart in unison. Numerous torrents of terrifying energy surged out like storms in front of everyone. However, the storms hadn't been able to spread before they were frozen on the spot by an invisible force. After that, everyone here watched with astonishment as the storm shrunk bit by bit before it finally transformed into a ray of light and vanished into thin air. Everyone here was astounded. Even Xianxia had disbelief in her eyes as she gazed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi has comprehended sword domain, which is said to have only been comprehended by the founding ancestor. Thump. Meanwhile, all the disciples who had betrayed the sect just now fell to their knees, and they ceaselessly begged for mercy from Xianxia. At this moment, they finally noticed that they didn't have any ability to resist when facing Yang Yi. The precondition to trying to bring someone down with them was the ability to actually injure that person. But now, detonating themselves was only equivalent to committing suicide for Yang Yi to watch. Xianxia shook her head and said, "Crippled their dantians and expel them from the sword sect. The heavens will decide their fate." Even though all of them had committed a terrible crime, they'd made contributions to the sword sect in the past. So, ordering their deaths would disappoint the last remaining disciples of the sword sect. Yang Yi didn't deny her decision, and he just nodded. Dejection and despair instantly covered the faces of all those disciples. Sky Hall. Xianxia sat upright at the seat of the host while Yang Yi was by her side. The remaining disciples of the sword sect were below, and there were less than 1,000 of them. They were all the disciples that the sword sect had now. Silence filled the entire hall as the faces of all disciples were covered in gloominess. Even though the sword sect had overcome the danger it faced, they were clearly aware that it was only temporary. If the Origin School and the other sects were to attack again when the sword sect only had so few disciples, then how would it even resist their attack? By relying on Yang Yi? Could he resist the joint forces of 4 great sects by himself? Even though Yang Yi was very strong, no one felt that he could resist the Origin School and the other sects by himself. Right at this moment, a figure appeared within the hall, and all of their spirits were raised upon noticing this figure because it was the one and only Monarch Realm expert of the Sword Sect, Wuxia. 2 days ago, Wuxia had been challenged by a Monarch Realm expert of the Origin School, and that expert had promised that the 4 sects wouldn't dispatch Monarch Realm experts if he agreed to the battle. So Wuxia had no choice but to accept. At that time, all the disciples of the Sword Sect were very clearly aware that Wuxia would probably be unable to return. Yet now he'd actually returned alive. That was undoubtedly like a pill of confidence for all the disciples of the Sword Sect. Xianxia had happiness on her face, as well while she said, "Father, are you all right?" Wuxia shook his head and said, "It was all thanks to the founding emperor, otherwise, I might have really been unable to return." As soon as he finished speaking, Wuxia gazed at Yang Yi and nodded. "You're back." Even though Wuxia was the previous sect master of the Sword Sect, he was also Xianxia's father, so Yang Yi didn't want to make her unhappy. He immediately nodded and said, "Fortunately, Senior Su is fine." Wuxia nodded and said, "Go on with the discussion. Xianxia's decision is my decision." As soon as he finished speaking, Wuxia vanished from the hall. Yang Yi frowned slightly because he noticed that Wuxia seemed to be injured. Xianxia seemed to have noticed something as well, and the happiness on her face gradually vanished. Meanwhile, an elder of the Sword Sect stepped forward, cupped his fists to Xianxia and said, "Sect Master, only a few disciples of our Sword Sect are left, and even the sect guarding Grand Formation has been destroyed. Our Sword Sect can be said to be facing a hopeless situation. May I ask, Sect Master, what our Sword Sect should do right now?" "Of course. I'm willing to live and die with the Sword Sect regardless of what Sect Master decides." A trace of sorrow arose in Xianxia's heart as she gazed at the disciples in the hall. She hadn't expected that the Sword Sect would actually decline to the point of only having less than 1,000 disciples while it was under her command. Presently, the sword sect was probably even inferior to some clans. After all, what could it do when it only had such a small number of members? Not to mention resisting the origin school and the other sects, even maintaining its inheritance was a problem. At this moment, a strand of powerlessness arose in Su Qingxi's heart. Meanwhile, she felt her hand being grabbed, and she saw Yang Yi smiling at her, causing her heart to instantly feel warm. She said, "From this moment onward, Yang Yi is the sword-commanding elder of the sword sect. His orders are like mine. All disciples of my sword sect must obey him. Otherwise, the punishment is having your dantian crippled and immediate expulsion from the sword sect." All of the disciples practically didn't hesitate at all to bow lightly to Yang Yi before they said, "Sword-commanding elder." Yang Yi didn't refuse and nodded. He hadn't intended to be the sword-commanding elder, but he didn't want Su Qingxi to shoulder such pressure on her own. He said, "I know that all of you are quite lost when it comes to the future of the sword sect. But do not worry. While the sword sect is facing a hopeless situation right now, it's far from destruction. Moreover, I personally feel that experiencing this tribulation was a blessing in disguise for the sword sect." That elder who spoke earlier bowed slightly to Yang Yi and said, "Sword-commanding elder? Please enlighten us." Yang Yi said, "I'm sure all of you are clearly aware about how the sword sect used to be. Most disciples had lost their edge, and they even lacked the courage to draw their swords when facing the disciples of the other sections. Just like what happened earlier. As disciples of the sword sect, they actually chose to surrender. Haha. What do all of you think the future of the sword sect would be like if the sword sect didn't experience such a tribulation and those fellows were allowed to remain in the sword sect and become part of the sword sect's higher-ups?" That elder laughed bitterly. "The sword sect would decline further." Yang Yi nodded and said, "This tribulation can be said to be a process of elimination. Since all of you were able to remain here, it proves that regardless of whether it's in terms of strength or loyalty, all of you aren't lacking at all. So, I believe that with all of you as the foundation, the sword sect would only need a certain amount of time before it would definitely rise from the ashes." That elder from before continued, "Sword-commanding elder, we've obtained information that all the disciples of the four sects have rushed over to our sword sect. How would we resist them with our current strength?" Yang Yi smiled. "Don't worry, we have reinforcements as well, and they'll be here soon. Now, 500 disciples shall stay behind to bury their fellow disciples who sacrificed themselves for the sect, and the other 500 shall form a provisional patrol to patrol the various peaks of the sword sect. Immediately slaughter any disciples of the other sects who dare to try and sneak in." "Understood." All of them withdrew from the hall. Right at this moment, little Yao suddenly ran into the hall and spoke anxiously. "Big brother, sister-in-law Yushi is gone." Yang Yi was just about to chase after her when he seemed to have thought of something, and he stopped and looked at Su Qingxi. Su Qingxi walked over to Yang Ye's side, and then she hugged him lightly and said softly, "Go bring her back." Yang Yi was extremely touched by this. He kissed her, and then his figure flashed and vanished from the hall. Su Qingxi sighed lightly in her heart as she watched Yang Ye's figure vanish. Meanwhile, little Yao walked over to her, took her hand, and then said, "Sister-in-law Qingxi, little Yao will help you beat big brother later for not just concentrating on you. You have a little baby right now, so you absolutely can't get angry. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for you or the baby." Su Qingxi smiled as she rubbed little Yao's head in silence. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to catch up to Xiao Yushi with the divine gold dragon as his steed. Both of them stood face to face on the divine gold dragon. A short while passed before Yang Yi laughed bitterly and said, "Yushi, no words are able to make up for the injustice both you and Qingxi have suffered. I just want to say that I won't give up on the two of you no matter what. You can call me shameless or even immoral. In any case, I will absolutely not allow the two of you to leave me." Yang Yi had decided that even if he had to wipe the floor with his face, he would still not allow Su Qingxi or Xiao Yushi to leave him. Xiao Yushi fell silent. This was exactly what Yang Yi feared the most. He walked over to Xiao Yushi, and then took her hand. He heaved a light sigh of relief in his heart when she didn't resist, and he said, Yushi, do you know? I was actually almost unable to return to the Southern Territory. Xiao Yushi's hand trembled slightly, and then she raised her head to gaze at Yang Yi. Yang Yi continued, Yushi, I experienced some things and found out about some secrets that even the half-saints of this world aren't aware of. One of those secrets is that our world is on the verge of destruction. I don't know when it'll be destroyed, and all I want to say is that if I'm unable to lead all of you to safety, then I hope I can die with all of you. In that way, we would have no regrets at least, all right? Xiao Yushi remained silent. Yang Yi spoke softly. I know asking both you and Xianxia to stay with me is quite shameless, but I really don't want to lose any one of you. I'm unable to endure losing any one of you. Xiao Yushi still remained silent. Yang Yi sighed lightly, and then he wrapped his hand around Xiao Yushi's waist and said, Come, let's go home. He issued a command in his heart as he spoke, and the divine gold dragon transformed into a ray of golden light that flew towards the sword sect. Even though Yang Yi seemed to be very domineering right now, he was actually extremely anxious in his heart. He was clearly aware that he couldn't allow Xiao Yushi to leave, otherwise, they would be parting forever. Because once she'd made a decision, it was very difficult to make her reconsider it. So, he couldn't allow her to leave regardless of whether he used words or force. Xiao Yushi didn't resist and allowed Yang Yi to hold her as they flew to the sword sect. The sword sect. Yang Yi, Xianxia, and Xiao Yushi sat facing each other in a room. Yang Yi was the first to break the silence and said, It's all my fault. Yushi, Xianxia, tell me what your decisions are. Don't worry, I'll be fine no matter what decision both of you make. I won't collapse and be eternally unable to break through into the monarch realm. Xianxia rolled her eyes at him. This husband of mine is actually still threatening me at a time like this. Needless to say, she was really worried that such a thing would happen to Yang Yi. She was very clearly aware how much importance Yang Yi placed upon all of this. If the two of them were to choose to leave him, then while he might not collapse from sorrow, he would definitely suffer a blow. Xiao Yushi glanced at Yang Yi as well, but she still remained silent. A short while passed before Xianxia said, Do you know why Yushi was angry? Yang Yi glanced at Xiao Yushi, and then he said, Because, in any case you understand why, Xianxia. Xianxia was both annoyed and amused, and she glared at him before she said, No one likes to share their husband with another, and it's the same for me as well. However, the real reason for our anger is that you kept it from us. Tell me, how long more would have you kept it from us if Yushi hadn't come to the Southern Territory and met me? I was afraid that. Xianxia interrupted him and said, Are you afraid that the two of us would fight? Yang Yi hurriedly nodded. Xianxia sighed and said, How foolish. Both of our hearts belong to you, so we wouldn't do anything that puts you in a difficult position or hurts you. The true cause of our anger is because you kept it from us. We're both people who are very close to you, so keeping it from us makes us feel like you lied to us. Husband, do you want to be lied to by your loved ones? Yang Yi hurriedly shook his head. Xianxia said, Leave for now. We have something to discuss. Yang Yi was slightly hesitant. They won't start fighting each other, right? It wouldn't be a problem if it were at any other time, but Xianxia is pregnant right now. We'll leave if you won't. Xianxia was about to stand up while she spoke, but Yang Yi hurriedly stopped her and said, Just talk properly. I'll be right outside. As he spoke, he glanced cautiously at them before he left. Xianxia shook her head and grinned when she saw him leave, and then she walked over to Xiao Yushi and took her hand before she said, We really terrified him by doing that? Xiao Yushi finally spoke. He deserved it. Xianxia nodded and said, We can't let him off that easily. How do you think we should punish him? Xiao Yushi fell silent for a while, and then she shook her head. Xianxia sighed lightly, and then she tightened her grip on Xiao Yushi's hand as she said, He has been living his entire life in anxiety, and he hasn't been able to relax at all since he was young. Once he grew up, he came to the sword sect with hopes of becoming a disciple for the sake of changing the living conditions of both mother-in-law and little Yao. However, He encountered an unexpected event that didn't just cause him to be unable to become an inner court disciple. He was even reduced to a labor disciple. In the end, he finally became an inner court disciple with great difficulty, yet the Flower Palace caused him to be expelled from the Sword Sect. After that, our mother-in-law was killed by the Flower Palace, and you know the rest. He can really be said to have never had a day of peace and stability throughout his life. Xianxia was visibly moved, and her eyes drooped. Tears flickered in Xianxia's eyes as she said, "Yuxi, have you realized? His viciousness and killing intent are very strong. He really doesn't attach any importance to the lives of anyone but the few of us. If it weren't in the Southern Territory, and if I didn't care for the Sword Sect, then he would have definitely disregarded the fate of the Southern Territory once he annihilated the Flower Palace. He'd become very lonely if he loses us, and then he'll become a downright peerless god of death. He has always been lonely." Xianxia sighed lightly. Xianxia nodded and said, "He has to go through all sorts of dangers and battles in the outside world, so let's not make it impossible for him to enjoy peace when he returns home. All right?" Xianxia remained silent for a short while before she said, "I never thought about leaving him." Xianxia smiled lightly and said, "Even though we've forgiven him, we can't allow him to continue being such a player, right?" "Yes." Xianxia nodded and agreed. Xianxia spoke a few words by Xiaoyuxi's ears, and then her fair face instantly turned rosy, but she still nodded in the end. Yang Yi was burning with impatience as he waited outside. He could be vicious and ruthless to his enemies, but he wasn't able to be ruthless to his own wives at all. Moreover, he was even in the wrong. A long time passed before the door was finally opened. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief in his heart when he saw that both of them were fine, and then he walked over to them and said, Both of you, are fine, right? We forgive you," said Xianxia. Yang Yi was slightly stunned, and then he was overjoyed. But he quickly restrained the happiness on his face because he couldn't allow himself to become puffed up pride and happiness. Otherwise, it would be very likely for extreme sadness to ensue. Yang Yi suppressed the happiness in his heart and took both their hands. He was just about to embrace them when Xianxia stopped him and said, "While we've forgiven you, you still can't avoid punishment. From tomorrow onward, you can't stay in the same room with us for a year." Xianxia blushed as she finished speaking. Yang Yi smiled bitterly when he heard this, but he quickly let it go, because it was countless times better than the outcome he'd expected. Yang Yi thought for a moment, and then he said, "Xianxia Yuxi, let me bring you somewhere." As he spoke, he waved his right hand, and the three of them instantly arrived in the first level of the primordial pagoda. "Where are we?" Both Xianxia and Xianxia gazed at the surroundings with shock. "This is my greatest secret," Yang Yi said. "We're in a pagoda and this is the first level. This world is equivalent to our continent in size." Xianxia and Xianxia were visibly moved when they heard this, and they glanced towards the surroundings. Sure enough, they were actually unable to see the end of it even with the strengths they possessed. Yang Yi flipped his hand, and then sheer wing appeared in his hand. He passed it to Xianxia and said, "Yuxi, give it a try and see if it suits you." A wisp of fondness flashed through Xianxia's eyes when she saw sheer wing. She didn't refuse at all and just took it before swinging it casually. The space before her was like a piece of paper that was split apart by a sharp blade, and a fine pitch-black rift appeared before them. "Amazing!" Xianxia praised. Yang Yi smiled and said, "Do you like it?" Xianxia nodded. Yang Yi waved his right hand, and then the mortal emperor armor appeared before Xianxia. He said, "Xianxia, this armor is for you. Even if a monarch realm expert attacks you in the future, you'll still be able to resist for a while by activating this armor." "The mortal emperor armor?" Xianxia's voice carried a trace of surprise. Xianxia was slightly moved by this gesture, but she hurriedly shook her head and was about to refuse when Yang Yi said, "Don't refuse. It's useless to me because my current physical body is much stronger than it." Xianxia hesitated for a moment before she accepted it. Meanwhile, Yang Yi wrapped his arms around their waists, causing both of them to blush slightly. However, they didn't resist. Su Qingshi said, "We told you just now. You have to wait a year before you can. I remember that you said it would be from tomorrow onwards. In other words, I'm still allowed to today." Both of them were at a loss for words,